50 Famous Fairy Tales. Tale 18. King Thrush-Beard. A certain king had a daughter who was beautiful beyond dreams, but so extremely proud and haughty that no suitor was good enough for her. She did not only refuse to marry every man who came to her, but she also poked fun at them. The king was anxious to get the girl married before her bad manners became so widely known that no man would have her. So he held a feast and invited all the marriageable young men from far and near. When they arrived, they all stood in a row, according to their rank. First stood the kings, then the princes, the dukes and earls, the last of all the knights. Then the king's daughter was led down the rows, but she found something wrong with each man. One was too fat. "Old wine tub," said she. Another was too tall. "He'd make a better fishing pole than a husband," she giggled. A third was too short. "Half a man," she teased him. And so she went on, nicknaming every one of the suitors. She made particularly merry with a young king, on whose chin a mere wisp of a beard had just begun to grow. "Ha ha!" laughed she. "He has the beard like a thrush's beak." And after that day he went by the name of Thrush-Beard. However, when the old king saw his daughter making fun of all the suitors, he became very angry, and swore that she would marry the first decent beggar who came to his gate. A few days after this, a musician came beneath the windows to sing, and so earned a few pennies. As soon as the king saw him, he ordered him to be called into the palace. The beggar came into the room in his dirty, ragged clothes, and sang before the king and princess. When he had finished, he bowed low and said, "A few pennies, your majesty, if my song pleases." The king said, "Your song pleases me so much that I shall give you my daughter for a wife." The princess was terribly angry, and stormed and wept. But the king said, "I have taken oath I will give you to the first decent beggar, and I intend to keep my word." All her tears and temper were in vain, and the princess was married to the beggar musician. When the ceremony was finished, the king said, "I cannot allow a beggar and his wife to remain in my palace, so be off, the both of you." The beggar led the princess away, and she was forced to trudge along with him on foot. As they came to a large forest, she asked, "To whom does this beautiful forest belong?" An echo replied, "To King Thrush-Beard, the true. Were you his bride, you'd rule it too." "Ah, how silly I was," she said. What a life would have been mine had I but married King Thrush-Beard." Next they came to a meadow, and she asked, "To whom belongs this green meadow?" The echo answered as before, "To King Thrush-Beard, the true. Were you his bride, you'd rule it too." Then they came to a great city, and she asked, "To whom does this town belong?" And the echo answered as before. "Ah, what a simpleton I was," she said. The princess sighed the poor princess. "Why didn't I marry him when I had the chance?" "Fie!" exclaimed the beggar. "Shame on you for always wishing for another husband. Am I not good enough for you?" Finally they came to a very small hut, and the princess said, "Ah, mercy, to whom can this miserable hovel belong?" The beggar replied, "That is my house." The hut was so small that the princess was obliged to stoop to get inside. She asked, "Where are the servants?" "Servants!" exclaimed her husband. "You must do all the work here." The princess knew nothing about making fires or cooking, and so the beggar had to set to work himself. As soon as they had finished their scanty meal, they went to bed. In the morning, the beggar awakened his wife very early so that she might clean the house. For a few days they lived this way. Then the husband said, "Wife, we can no longer go on without earning a penny. You must weave some baskets." He went out and cut some willows and brought them home. But when his wife tried to make them into baskets, the twigs cut her hands and made them bleed. I see that won't do," said her husband. "You had better try spinning." The princess sat down to spin, but the harsh thread cut her tender fingers so they bled. "Lack-a-day," said the husband. You can't do a thing, can you? I made a bad bargain in taking you. Now we must try to make a living by selling earthen jars and dishes. You will sit in the market and sell them." The first time she went to market, all went well, for the people bought the princess's wares, and because she was so pretty. On her earnings, the beggar and she lived for some time. When the money was gone, her husband bought a fresh stock of dishes, and with these she again went to the market, and took a stall at the corner. Suddenly a drunken soldier came plunging down the street on his horse, and rode into the midst of her dishes, shattering them into 1,000 pieces. When she told her husband what had happened, he scolded her and said, "Whoever would have thought of sitting in an open corner to sell dishes? I see that you are not fit for any ordinary work. But stop crying. I have been to the king's palace, and they have agreed to take you as a kitchen maid. There you can get your own food and bring me some as well." So the princess became a kitchen maid. She was obliged to fetch and carry as the cook bade her, and scour dirty pots and pans. She kept a jar in each of her pockets, and put into them whatever food was left from the king's table. On this she and her husband made their meals. She soon got over her pride and haughtiness, and became meek and good-tempered. About this time she heard that the king was to be married, and she begged the cook to let her go and watch the celebration. The cook consented, and the kitchen maid placed herself near the door of the ballroom. When she saw all the guests in their fine clothes, she wept bitterly, and thought how she might have been in the ballroom among them if she had only not been so proud and haughty. Presently the king entered, clothed in silk and velvet, and wearing a golden chain around his neck. As soon as he saw the beautiful kitchen maiden standing at the door, he seized her by the hand and asked her to dance with him. She was terribly frightened and tried to pull away, for she saw it was the same King Thrush-Beard who had courted her, and at whom she had laughed. Her struggles were of no avail, and as he drew her near into the ballroom, the jars fell out of her pockets and crashed to the floor, scattering bits of pie, cake, and meat scraps all around her. When the guests saw this, they burst into laughter, and the poor girl was so embarrassed that she wished she had never left the kitchen. At last she managed to free herself and run off, but King Thrush-Beard soon overtook her and held her fast in his arms. "Look at me," he said in a gentle voice. "Don't you know your own husband?" And when she stared at him wildly, he added, "Yes, King Thrush-Beard and the beggar-musician are the same man. I was also the soldier who broke your dishes. I did this to help you overcome your pride and haughtiness." At these words the princess wept bitterly, and said, "I am not worthy to be your wife, for I have been a wicked and foolish maiden." But he replied, "Those evil days are over." Immediately bridesmaids took the princess away, bathed her in milk and sea foam, and dressed her in her beautiful clothes. Then her father and his whole court arrived, and wished her happiness on her wedding day. So commenced the princess's true joy as queen of the handsome King Thrush-Beard. The end.